And I guess one of the follow-up topics that automatically comes to mind from the discussion we just had is not just the questions that need to be answered to address the challenges of where exactly you put in what kind of mixture of tools and platforms and methodologies, but it's also dealing with that age-old issue of culture, and to talk about how culture and technology fare when they meet each other. We have here Kathi Kaiser and Tanya Treptow, K-A-N-T-T. Welcome the ladies with a round of applause.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Is the mic on? Yes, okay. It's remarkable how you can't tell from up here if it is or not. We're very excited to be here with you today to share our work on how mobile impacts the museum experience. Tanya and I come from Centralis. We are a user experience research and design firm. So we actually don't work in market research. We work in user experience, which is a kind of close cousin field. And our mission at Centralis, which is based here in Chicago, is to help our clients make their products, services, websites, mobile apps easier, more rewarding, and more compelling. Okay? So we do that through a lot of research, a lot of traditional methods, which I'm glad I now have permission to admit, and also through design work, actually changing those experiences so that they better meet user needs and then therefore can address business objectives. Lately, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about the museum experience. Chicago is a great town for museums. If you haven't had the chance yet, if you're in from out of town, please do take a chance to visit some of our great cultural institutions, the Art Institute, the Museum of Science and Industry, the Field Museum, which we'll hear more about in a little bit. These are fabulous organizations that are full of really smart people who spend a lot of time figuring out what it is they want you to know about their subject matter and then designing exhibits to put that information forward. And traditionally, the museum experience for the visitor is one of looking and hopefully learning. So people kind of walk through museums, they stop at things that catch their eye, maybe they read a label, and they ponder, they take something away. Now, what exactly they take away is a bit of a mystery, but we know that museums have traditionally followed this pattern. The curators decide what the message is, they hope that the visitors get it, the visitors come and take something away with them. Well, this whole domain is changing, because mobile is rocking the museum world just the way it's rocking the market research world. Okay? These days, everybody's got a device in their pocket that can completely transform their experience and make it more their own, that can make them a more active participant in co-creating the experience of interacting with these cultural objects, artifacts, paintings, etc. So what we're going to do today is share with you a couple of examples of some museums that are leading the way in bringing these mobile technologies into this experience to create something that's more fulfilling, and also some ways to evaluate those technologies. All right, has anyone been here? Is this familiar to anyone? Okay, this is the Gallery 1 wall at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and it is fabulous. I highly recommend it if you ever get to Cleveland. It's worth going to Cleveland just to play with this thing. Each of those light squares is an object in the museum, painting, sculpture, artifacts. And what you can do is tap on them, flip through to see other related artifacts, either the same artist, the same time period, the same medium, and basically identify things that you want to see. Then you can drag those down to an iPad, either your own or one they provide for you at the museum, and it'll create a tour for you. So you can basically say, you know, these are the things I'm interested in. And by the way, this is fun in and of itself. This is a great experience. And then you can take your iPad and walk through the museum and visit these items and get additional content, multimedia, video, audio guides, additional context, just great stuff. So much more active than the traditional, I'm going to wander around and I'm going to see what I see. By the way, I should mention that these examples I'm showing you are not things that we've worked on at our company in particular. Tanya will share a case study of some work we did do with the Field Museum a little bit later. All right. Another example of a great piece of interactive digital medium in a museum is at the National Maritime Museum in the UK. This one I have not had the pleasure to explore personally yet, but I did hear about it at a conference. And what you can see here in this atrium is a huge map of the world on the floor. And you can take an iPad and you can actually walk around the map, and it will show you what happened there. You know, oh, I'm standing in the South Indian Ocean. What interesting things happened here? And sensors on the floor will pick it up, interact with the iPad, and give you additional content. So again, what we're seeing here is the user having much more control over what they want to explore and having a more layered experience. They can just look if that's all they want to do, or they can dive deep if that's what they want to do. And the flip side of all of these apps and neat digital technology, by the way, is that the museum gets something out of it too. Because museum folks are always asking themselves, what will people find interesting? What will they engage with? How can we get them to come back again and again? And these tools collect the data that they need to make those decisions. So at the Cleveland Museum of Art, they know what the most frequently visited objects are, or how many objects are appropriate in a tour and when people start to drop off. Here they can get a sense of, you know, what types of history is most interesting to people who are wandering on this map. When is a non-digital interaction appropriate? Like you can see the little plastic boat. There's actually good old manual ride a plastic boat around the map interactions as well. So all of this data is critical for helping the museum understand how they can better meet visitor needs in the context of this new mobile interactive environment. The Dallas Museum of Art has developed kind of a traditional loyalty program. I know this is very common in corporations, new to museums. In this program, people can get points for visiting particular things. There are codes that they can type into their phone to basically indicate that they've visited certain parts of the museum. And they can spend those points on behind-the-scenes tours or special exhibitions or fun things that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. And it seems to be a soaring success for the friends themselves, the visitors. They enjoy it. But also, it gives data to the museum. What are people doing? What should we do more of? You know, we live in a world of limited time and budget. How can we best spend that to create the most engagement for our audience? All right. So museums are very good, by the way, at understanding who their visitors are and what their needs are at a couple of different points in the visitor experience. They do have a good sense of why people go to museums. So there's been a lot of research done on profiles of museum visitors. Some people come because they are, you know, exploring with a child and they want to facilitate that learning experience. Other people come because they have a particular interest in the domain. Some people just like to rest and relax. Museums have done a lot of work on understanding what visitors bring to the experience. They also have a pretty good set of tools, evolving, of course, as mobile evolves, for getting feedback after the visit. So mobile surveys are being used. Hey, what did you do today? What did you like about it? After the experience is over. For the most part, that seems to be how museums are doing it. This, of course, begs the question, what about during the visit? The key with these apps, you know, these apps really can help museums understand so much more about what people want and deliver more compelling experiences, but only if they're used, right? The app doesn't help anybody if it ends up back in the visitor's pocket because they couldn't figure out how it worked, or because it was cumbersome, or because it interfered with their social engagement. There are a million reasons why the user could put that app back in their pocket. So this is a critical moment to understand. Okay, what can we do during the visit to make sure that people actually use these things so that we can collect the data? And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya to talk about a case study.
All right, well, thank you, Kathy. Can everybody hear me? I can't tell either. That's a hard thing. All right, well, thank you for kind of setting the scene for us with some of the factors that go into this conversation between museums and their visitors, and how digital devices and mobile devices and apps especially can provide a better conversation and lead to new innovations. So what we did recently is work with the Field Museum on an app. You can see an example here. It's called the Tours app. And so in this Tours app, there's three main areas. There's the tours, there's a create a tour, and there's discover. So if you're looking at that, you might think, well, maybe that would be something you could use in a museum, and you'd be right. It's very similar to the types of mobile devices that Kathy was describing. It's meant for visitors to open up once they're in the museum walls, in the gallery, so they can get additional inspiration. So the tours area, for example, provides lists of pre-programmed content, object lists that are organized by themes, such as a specific special exhibit or maybe highlights of the museum. And there's navigational information as well as extra content, multimedia, and videos, audios, and other types of features to engage people's attention. Create a tour is pretty similar, actually, but it provides for a bit more mixing and matching so that people can choose their own experience and have a say in what they want. And then finally, the Discover area, it's a bit different. It involves a feature that's not digital. It involves QR codes on panels located next to artifacts and objects in the museum. People can scan and access their multimedia content directly. So the museum has a number of goals for this app. There, of course, as Kathi was saying, there's this engagement factor. Museums really want to provide a way for people to learn. But for the field, too, they're really hoping that this device will help them, over time, be able to iterate their content and determine what is the areas they should focus on to engage people more in the future. So, and I also should mention, this app is kind of a unique thing in the museum world in that it's not just a digital experience. And it's not a tool for research. It's something in between. It's integrated into the experience itself, which means it can be a bit more complex to study how well it's working. And so that's where we came in. We worked with the Field Museum to develop a study to understand the use of this device in context. And so what we did for this study, it was a qualitative study, and we didn't use an ethnographic approach. Instead, we used usability study, where we had pre-selected people, pre-screened people come into the museum with us as facilitators and spend an hour with us. I think we had 8 total. And we provided them with a pre-downloaded version of the app on an iPhone and had them walk around the museum, imagining they were completing some hypothetical tasks. Now, these are very broad tasks, things like imagine that you had seen a sign in the museum and downloaded the app, what could you do? Or maybe a little bit more specific, imagine you'd like to see some highlights in the museum. How could you use the app to help you? And as people walked around, we had a facilitator, either myself or Kathi, talk with the participants, trying to understand their mental models for what they were doing, what they found easy to accomplish, where they had confusions. And from this data, we were able to get a sense of how this app fit into their larger experience in the museum. So one big thing about setting up a type of study like this is that there are challenges because it's a mobile study. And one thing we wanted to accomplish was providing our results to the larger team in the museum. And so we had to think creatively about how we could record these types of feedback. So one way we did that was through this handy-dandy sled that you can see here. With the mobile phone, there was a Velcro attachment basically on the bottom. It attaches to the sled, and there's a camera above at the top of the sled that shines right down onto the phone and the person handling it. And in this kind of testing, it's important not just to have a screenshot of what people are doing, but also what they're trying to tap. Are they able to tap that once, or are they struggling? Are they swiping? Are they swiping in a direction where they're not supposed to? All that you can capture when you have this additional feedback beyond the device itself. And then in addition to that, we also had a second observer with a handheld camera filming the participant in context in the museum. Since this is not just a digital experience, we needed to capture what's going around them and how are they interacting with the exhibits as well as the digital interface. So with these kind of background information, what I'd like to do is go into some of the key lessons we found from this type of testing, and then also show a couple examples of behavior we saw and the reasons why we were seeing it, which is one of the strengths of doing this type of research. So kind of to start off with things, we found it's important to engage with users on their terms and not our terms. And so an example of this type of learning is what you can see here from this sort of moment in time of one of our participants using their iPad, or excuse me, their iPhone and going through the museum. And what we did for our participants, we either let them free explore or have a task. And we found that most people went into the tours area of the app. pre-programmed content. Some were attracted by the big tours button at the top of that screen. Others, we said, what if you wanted to see some highlights? And they went to that area. But we also found some different behavior as they were actually walking around the museum. Even if they had self-chosen to go into the tours area, a lot of our participants decided to do something else. They saw QR codes next to exhibit objects, wondered what was that, and ended up, as this person is doing, scanning that, seeing what content was there, and being delighted a lot of the times by the panoramas they were seeing or the videos and multimedia, and they ultimately became distracted from their original task of doing a tour and started searching around for QR codes that they could access. So we heard why people were doing this from their own descriptions. They talked about a museum visit being something that was spontaneous, something where they wander around and figure out what's going to be exciting to me next. And the QR codes really fit with that process. So we wanted to engage people one task, they went to another, and really our lesson from this is that it's important to work from multiple directions. So it's great that the app has flexibility to catch people at different moments of time in order to get the feedback about their engagement with the content itself. We also saw as another key finding that it's important for a user to be able to find an experience in order to enjoy it and for that conversation to happen. So the example we have here is this map that you can see over on the right-hand side. It's just a small portion of a larger map, and it is located within a tour. And it's a getting started area of the tour. So for example, this participant here, he went into the tour, was excited to go see the first object in the tour, found this intro section, and started following the map to where that blue dot was indicating to him. And what he ended up doing was walking all the way across the museum before he realized, uh-oh, that was just an example. That's not where the exhibit is that I want to see this interactive content. And so in this scenario, the fact that he accessed the content really wasn't the same as his emotional experience of trying to process what that content was and what he needed to find on the app. So he didn't quite get to where he wanted in order to appreciate the objects in the museum. And related to that point, what we found overall in this type of study and others is that if you get usability wrong, you really have trouble moving on to the types of data collection that you're interested in. And so this is an example of some specific object content on the app about the Tsavo lions. And if you haven't seen them at the field, you should probably check them out. They're famous African lions that were man-eaters, and they're now one of the premier attractions at the field. And people would access this either once they got to the exhibit or maybe in advance of it if they were in the tour. And what they would say is, oh, I'm excited to see what kind of things there are. Maybe there's a video. Or, I don't know, I'd like to learn more. And they pretty much all scrolled down to try to find that content. And they didn't see anything. It didn't go anywhere. And so we saw a couple of reactions. Some people said, oh, well, this is okay, and went on to other things. And other people expressed actual disappointment, and they said, I would need to have more content to enjoy this. But the thing was, the content is there. It's just a little bit unexpected for them. So if you scroll to the right, you can see videos. And if you scroll to the left, you can see navigational information. And they weren't getting that, even though they said, even in advance of seeing the screen, that they wanted it. So the actual usage of a device isn't quite the same as the desires and needs of its users. And so we were able to collect, this is the moment of time where they could have used an additional explanation. All right, and those are our key findings. I'm going to hand it back over to Kathi.
All right, thanks. So just to wrap things up, I know most of you probably don't work in museums, and much of our work is in other contexts as well. But this type of approach is beneficial really anywhere where you have a digital interface that is interacting with something else in the world. So we've applied this approach to studying the Chicago transit system. As a matter of fact, just outside on the street here, some new signage they put up. And it's really helpful to be able to understand the usability of screen by screen, what happens on a phone, but also how that interacts with the greater experience in the larger world. Also in a shopping context, And we've talked a lot about shopping and the role of phones in shopping. This is a great approach to get at some of those whys. I mean, it should underscore that this is qualitative. This is not meant to replace the larger data sets that you can get from the app itself. But the point is you won't get those larger data sets if people can't use the app. So doing some in-context usability testing can really help you make sure that that adoption is going to happen so it can fuel future usage and get you the data you need. Because really, what's the goal here? This is the goal. This may be the happiest research participant I have ever met. He was absolutely delighted with this panorama. And it's pretty cool. What he's doing is he's looking through the phone, and he's rotating in the main hall of the museum, seeing a panorama of what it looked like at the time of the 1893 World's Fair. Fantastic stuff. And wow, is he thrilled. He's saying, "You gotta be kidding me. This is awesome." This type of engagement is what we're after. If we can get this type of engagement on mobile platforms, not only are the people going to be happy, which is great, but they're going to use them. And we're going to be able to get rich and exciting data to help us, turn this into a great cycle where they will then use them more, and we'll know what they like, and we'll create more of that, and then they'll use it more, and they'll tell their friends, and hooray. So this is what I keep in mind when I think about working on this stuff. I want to create this experience. And clearly it's doable. And one way to do that is to make sure that you're covering off on these usability issues so that people can get those out of the way and just have a great and exciting, compelling experience. And with that, we'll take questions.
That was great. And I have one question. Is there a product placement opportunity for you the next time they make a Night at the Museum movie?
We were there after hours, and it is a bit creepy.
Okay, so questions about the museum, about culture in general, culture versus technology, possible uses for this kind of methodology and other opportunities? If not, we'll move along. Thank you so much, Kathi
Thank
and
you.
Tanya.